Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. There's 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Ideas are bulletproof.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It is January 29th, 2012. This is another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. And today, I am joined by 2 men who I would consider to be not just filmmakers and radio show hosts in their own right, but I would say true patriots. Because both these gentlemen went out of their way to find incredible amounts of evidence regarding the truth of the Oklahoma City bombing. And we really don't have any definitive documentary that gives you any truth or evidence of what really went on, not, quote-unquote, the government's official story. But we do now, and it's thanks in part to the 2 gentlemen I have on the show with me today. So without wasting any time, let's get right into it. I have James Lane and Holland Vandennieuwenhof, both the creators of A Noble Lie. Gentlemen, welcome to the program, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having us on, Popeye.
Thank you very much.
The movie is just, I have to say, I've seen tons of movies, conspiracy-oriented documentaries, I should say, and read a lot of books. And I got to say, this movie is right up there with one of the top definitive informational videos about what went on of a false flag event, this one in regards to Oklahoma City. In fact, there isn't really any other movie out there that gets into it like you guys did. What made you both want to, what got you started into Oklahoma City? Was it the event itself, or was it years later?
Well, I tell you, I live here. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, and, as soon as I woke up and got involved, to expose this stuff and to get involved with the truth movement, I said that, we have a responsibility, living here in Oklahoma to get the truth out because there's so many people out there that really don't know. They were too young, or they just weren't paying attention at the time. And, 9/11 has gotten so much focus that, we just had a duty to get this done. And, I think if you know everything about the Oklahoma City bombing or nothing, you're going to walk away with something from this movie, because what we did is we took what would literally have been 10 or 12 hours worth of material and boiled it down to 2 hours of just the most provable evidence and eyewitness testimony. We used a method that I think was really honed by Manny Badillo, where you bring the victim's family members in, you establish the emotional credibility. These people are asking questions about their loved ones that died. And then you bring in the experts, and that brings in the expertise, the credibility from the technical aspect. And those two combined are unstoppable. The only thing that someone can do to try to tear it apart is just go for ad hominem attacks, because if they want to debate the issues, we'll tear them apart.
Exactly. We didn't have room for speculation. Most of our witnesses that we interview are government employees. Almost all of our documents are government documents. So we really didn't have to make anything up. All we did was demonstrate that the official story of the Oklahoma City bombing is a lie.
And I have to say, you guys did a phenomenal job with the movie. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest you purchase a copy of A Noble Lie. And no, both of them will attest, they didn't give me a free copy to screen before I had them on. I asked them to come on. They didn't, come and beg me to come on. I asked them, and I purchased a copy of the film because, A, I believe it's good to have your own library, but I like to support the filmmakers that bring truth. And these guys really worked their tails off on this movie. So, James or Holland, one of you guys give out the website where they can go purchase the movie, because this is something really they need to get in their library.
Absolutely. You can go to anoblelie.com. You can pick it up there directly from the site. If you want to support InfoWars, you can buy it from the InfoWars store, the Power Mall, various other folks. I think Brave New Books down in Austin, et cetera, places like that. But for making this movie, funding the movie, we funded it out of our own pockets, because we didn't want to take money from an outside source that then would have influence over the content. This is true independent filmmaking, and we don't get giant money bombs. So in order for us to recoup our expenses and be able to make that next movie, it's going to take folks doing what you just said right there, Popeye. Just support the filmmakers, and then once we get to that point, we do intend on making this more readily available to folks. But we're still in the first few months, and every sale really counts, towards us being able to continue to bring this type of information to the public.
I agree. You can't do a movie of this magnitude, the amount of research, time, energy, production value, because, ladies and gentlemen, that means a lot too. These guys could have put together a great movie and had crappy production value and nobody would watch it. So their attention to detail with just minute things, even in post-production, okay, it's just incredible. And that makes it all the more worthwhile. And you need to support them. That's just the plain fact. If we don't support the independent media, it'll go the way of the dodo, and that's what these big corporations want. So, and I mean, look, in reality, where are they coming to, guys? They're coming to us, right? The public is now coming to the alternative media for truth. So I think it's important for everybody out there to support any form of independent media, and in this case, support both of these guys and buy the film. I mean, you can buy a few copies of it and give it out as a gift. You want to give something out for Valentine's Day? Give out A Noble Lie. What better of a gift than truth? Maybe it's not romantic, but, too bad. The truth sometimes sucks. All right, getting back into it, guys, you really presented a ton of information, and we're going to get cut off by the break in about 2 minutes. So I don't want to get too much into anything until we come back on the other side, but there's one thing I did notice in the movie. There's a clip of the Murrah building, and I never noticed this until, again, I saw A Noble Lie, just another reason to get it, that there's a huge, well, there not anymore, but there was a huge all-seeing eye, like metal statue type thing deal in front of the building. Apparently, there's a shot of it. I forget at what part in the movie, but I guess there's a still shot of the Murrah building, and there's the logo from the back of the dollar bill, the quote-unquote seal, and it's right there, and it says, New World Order, Annuit Coeptis, and Novus Ordo Seclorum underneath it, and it's like, oh, it's right in your face. No wonder they picked that building.
That's one of the few things that are still standing there at the memorial site.
It's still there?
It's
Yeah, they left
it's
it
the
there.
signature.
Yeah, they left it there.
Oh, how sick. I didn't even realize that thing was still there.
Mm-hmm.
That's disgusting. When we talk about, that's like the torch at Kennedy's grave or above the tunnel where Diana was killed. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's them thumbing their nose at us and saying, we did it.
Yep.
Well, an artist always likes to leave their signature, right?
Yeah. Ugh. Disgusting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Show's going by fast so far. Stay tuned. We're back in a few minutes. Go get the movie. I'm not kidding. I'm telling you, I don't promote stuff unless I believe in it. Get the movie and support these guys. We'll be right back. You know, I just thought about that little all-seeing eye that they left there, and I think it's interesting that they could drop a building with that thing right there and not take it out into its own footprint. I would guess that takes some sort of talent to be able to bring a massive structure down into a somewhat neat pile without bringing any other buildings in the surrounding area down around it with it. Wonder where one could employ those type of talents in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm being sarcastic, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about 9/11. Very, very few people have the ability to bring a building down that perfectly.
That is the
not
same
easy.
company.
Yeah, Controlled Demolition, Inc.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you guys, what have you found getting into them? That's actually a good spot to dive into this. What have you guys found out about Controlled Demo, Inc.? Have you found anything shady besides the fact that they were the first people to come in and, obviously get the cleanup contract?
I have not done any in-depth work on them. That's for the future. This case is still open, and we're still pursuing leads and taking interviews as they come. Controlled Demolition was the company involved in the final demolition of the Murrah building a month after the bombing. This was somewhat controversial because there were still bodies left inside the building that had yet to recover, yet they were still insisting on bringing the building down, and they did. I think they did that because it would rapidly become obvious that the crater was offset from the major damage to the building, and that any independent analysis of that building would show that to be true, that the official story is false. In fact, when the American Society of Civil Engineers came to do their study, they were kept 200 feet back from the building. This is while there are dog crews and rescuers inside, but they kept the ASCE outside because they said it was too dangerous for them to actually come inside the building and do their analysis. So, I mean, it was just a sham. They weren't even allowed to examine anything, and their conclusion, even that was problematic, and one of the engineers there said that there was brisance damage on some of the beams.
And you mentioned 9/11. Oklahoma City was a precursor in numerous ways. You know, we see that the anti-terrorism legislation was stalled in this country prior to the Oklahoma City bombing. Afterwards, it passed without barely any opposition. There was a patriot movement that was going very strong at the time. The militias, the people that are talking about restoring the Constitution, anti-globalization, anti-NAFTA, free trade zones, things like that. And the globalization agenda was completely stalled. After that, if you opposed globalization, you were a McVeigh, and they invoke that name to this day. We see the same thing happen with 9/11. The Patriot Act just flew through without any opposition, and it was already written before the event even occurred. One of the interesting things that happened with the investigation, one of the groups that got probably, the most heavily involved in the investigation is the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee, and that was headed up by Charles Key. You have a prominent business leader in the area. You've got a survivor from the bombing. These guys, got together and really did a thorough job because they went to talk to a congressional delegation about the Oklahoma City bombing and trying to get some sort of investigation at the federal level. And they said, create a report. Bring us something that we can take to Congress and try to get a congressional hearing. And so they submitted it to the to Congress 3 weeks before 9/11, and was completely overshadowed by that event. So there's all kinds of crossover, and I know again Manny Badillo, he's talked about interest about trying to get some of the 9/11 victims' families together with some of the folks the Oklahoma City victims' families, and because they're treated the same way. If you ask questions, that they just want you to shut up.
They treat you like you have leprosy. They look at you like you're just crazy and a kook Look how disrespectful they are. Look at Beck. I hate the 9/11 victims' families. Mm-hmm. The government did a good job. No, they didn't. They did not. Even I, who kind of bought the original story when it happened because I was so close, I'll admit it, I experienced part of the trauma-based mind control. Okay? I had survivor's guilt for years. Like, how come I should have known something, I should have done, more. And so many people I knew had the same experience, that we lived close, and people that lived far away, they couldn't grasp that feeling, you know what I mean? They couldn't get into that.
It's an effective methodology, and that is why it is their go-to item in their toolbox. And we are overdue for another false flag. The Patriot movement is growing and going strong right now, and the false flag is what they're going to do to try to silence us. And this is why exposing Oklahoma City, exposing 9/11, these types of movies, I believe they literally save lives. When you look at Kurt Haskell, the very first radio interview he did after the underwear bomber incident, he said he knew there was something wrong with 9/11, and he was determined not to allow that to happen in that case. His story stayed the same for 2 months. The FBI changed their story more times than I can count, and then finally on the editorial of some back page of a newspaper, they admit, we were involved. There's, we did have an agent there, et cetera. And people like that, people like Kurt Haskell, when we reach them, when you folks get movies like this, you take it out and you wake up your friends and family, you are taking away the New World Order's ability to perpetuate false flags to further their own geopolitical ends.
I agree 100%. I mean, you want to talk about the weaponry of today is information. Well, Hillary Clinton said, not even a year ago, that we are in an info war and we're losing, meaning the United States government, and that they're losing horribly to us in the info war. And, of course, they blamed RT and other stuff, but it's really to combat the alternative media. And it's people like you two putting a film together. Yeah, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, they're not rock stars, and no offense, guys, I'm not making fun of you, but they're not rock stars. These guys are concerned citizens who they just decided to stand up. They're just like anybody else. You all have the same power to do this. I preach about this all the time on my show, about getting up and doing stuff, and everybody having the ability to do it. It's not just certain select individuals and that people need to follow them. Everybody is that individual. You know what I mean? And you guys are a perfect example. I mean, you're two citizens who got pissed off at what happened with Oklahoma City, and you decided to investigate it. And look what you two have created over the course of time. I mean, I really have to applaud you guys for your efforts. And if nobody else will, thank you.
Well, thank you for that. We didn't start out as filmmakers. We didn't even have that aspiration. But the documentary format medium right now is one of the best ways to get the message out to the masses. We knew from the bulk of the evidence that the official story in Oklahoma City was wrong. That we knew that the true people had gotten away, and we had to tell the story somehow. So we just determined to make a movie about it, and we gathered the right team, the right talent, and we worked our butts off for 2 years and finally got it done. But I mean, that is a testament. Just if you finally stand up and say, I'm not going to take it anymore, I'm going to do something at the very least, and I'm going to chip in and not surrender and not back down. I'm going to go for it. You can accomplish great things.
Well, and putting together the right team, I can't take much credit on this because, we had director of photography that makes those interviews look like $1 million. That's Devin Winter. We have an excellent researcher, Wendy Painting. She's put a lot of her own personal, money and effort into her research. Chris Emery. I mean, good grief, the guy's a walking encyclopedia of the Oklahoma City bombing. Austin Green did our editing. I mean, I could go on and on, but without any one person that was on this team, this movie wouldn't have happened. There were so many hurdles that we encountered along the way, and it just seemed like they would move. They would move out of the way. We would need something, and almost literally people would just stumble in the door. Do you need one of these? So I give a lot of that credit to the people that have worked really hard on this with us, and I do appreciate them.
You've all done an incredible job, and I think you all deserve a round of applause. And again, ladies and gentlemen, just support them. They're not asking to be famous. All they're asking is that you support them by purchasing the film for a very cheap price. And that way they can do more and more investigations, delve deeper into this. Maybe, who knows, maybe you buying the DVD will be able to fund James and Holland investigating deeper into Controlled Demolition Inc. And who knows, these two could be the ones that turn over the evidence that shows you that maybe they were involved in 9/11 or Oklahoma City. And I'm not saying they were. I'm just saying, if they were, who knows? Who knows what you could help accomplish? Just remember, you're all the one. You all have the power. We're going to break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Today, I'm sitting with James Lane and Holland Vandennieuwenhof, the filmmakers, part of the massive crew that created the epic film A Noble Lie, which I urge you again to go purchase. You need to see this. If you've never ever looked into the Oklahoma City bombing or said, well, there's really not too much information on it. Well, now there is. Go get the movie. There's a few things I want to get into, guys. First being Terrence Yakey. Now, what is the deal with that? I mean, the guy's a hero. Kind of like of almost like William Rodriguez proportions, on the scale of what he did that day. And then he questioned things because the official story didn't line up with what he saw. And then things went down the hill from there. So, Holland, I'll give you the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. Oklahoma City Police Sergeant Terrence Yakey was the first officer to respond to the building. He was just a couple blocks away. He heard multiple explosions coming from the Murrah building. When he arrived on the scene, he saw people standing outside the building that should not have been there, federal agents based in offices very far away. He saved 8 lives that day. He wasn't, of course, thinking about these things. He was concentrating on saving lives. He saved 8 lives until he fell into the crater and injured himself. After the bombing, after he started talking with fellow officers about some of the things he had seen, the police department began a long, steady campaign of harassment with him. They couldn't go too far because he'd been awarded the Medal of Valor, the department's highest award. But he was still talking, and they were harassing him, and they wouldn't let him get his original report that he wrote on the things he'd actually seen. About a year after the bombing, he calls a friend of his. He says, hey, let's meet for dinner. I got to shake these feds who are following me. Those were his words, these feds who are following me. And this is not the first time that Terrence Yakey had been followed by the FBI. He knew exactly who it was. He was on his way to a mini storage out in rural Oklahoma to deliver some boxes of documents. He never arrived. A Canadian County Sheriff's deputy found his car full of blood. Then they searched the area. A mile and a half away, they find his body. He has over a dozen wounds and lacerations across his body. He has ligature marks on his wrist and on his neck, and he has a bullet wound that enters the top right portion of the head and exits the lower left near the jaw. There are no powder burns. This is ruled a suicide. No autopsies performed. No ballistic tests are performed on the weapon. And I believe the murder of Terrence Yakey served to silence his voice and the voice of anyone else out there who may want to talk about what they saw. I have been approached by police officers myself, and they brought up Terrence Yakey, and they knew he had been killed. So the message was passed. But we interview in A Noble Lie his mother, and we feature his family talking about their brother and that he was not suicidal. He had everything to live for. He just could not be allowed to give that speech when he got that medal, is my personal belief. But he was killed to silence the first responders from actually trying to do anything.
Now, this is actually leads into to what I believe is one of the major smoking guns of the case, which is, one of the hallmarks of ammonium nitrate and fuel oil, known as ANFO, is the ammonium nitrate gas cloud which is created after the explosion. No matter it be in Northern Ireland or Madison, Wisconsin 41 years ago, the first responders are usually hospitalized from the inhalation of nitric gas. This did not happen in Oklahoma, and Terrence Yakey is one of the prime examples there, including some of the other survivors. But he was on the scene within minutes. He saved 8 people's lives, and he had no problem with respiration. This calls into question whether or not ANFO was even used in the bombing. I mean, there was no doubt there was a truck bomb, but, what was the actual,
the cause of damage to the Murrah building could not have been the truck bomb for some very major reasons. One, the crater from the truck bomb is offset from the major damage. The major bite into the building almost went all the way through the building. The rest of the building, only the front columns collapsed, but yet offset from the crater, almost the entire building is gone. This is impossible with a truck bomb. Blast waves do not turn corners. There are columns closer to the truck bomb that are totally intact. The sheetrock is intact, yet a column farther away totally dissolves. We interview General Benton K. Parton. He wrote the Parton Report. He was a former head of Air Force weapons development development. He concluded that there were bombs inside the building, up to 4. We also feature the Eglin Air Force Base study. The Air Force actually conducted a simulation of the truck bomb at Oklahoma City to test the official hypothesis. They found it to be untrue. They concluded there were bombs inside the building.
And when your listeners go to ennoblelie.com and get a copy of this movie, they're also going to get the eyewitness testimony where these people that were actually in the building that day that survived the explosion said that the building was coming down 8 to 10 seconds before the truck bomb went off. Jane Graham was in a Windows 95 training course that morning. The instructor had time to assess the situation and say, it's an earthquake, get under your desk. Then Jane thinks it doesn't feel like an earthquake. Then the truck bomb goes off. VZ Lawton was hit by debris in the head and knocked under his desk before the truck bomb goes off. We've got another witness that said he thought it was an earthquake. He dove under his desk. Then the glass blows in. According to the FEMA report, that blast wave was moving at 1,300 feet per second. Now, you reconcile the math on that one.
3 seismographs in Oklahoma recorded 2 energetic events 8 to 10 seconds apart. An official representative of the Oklahoma Geological Survey wrote that this was 2 explosions unrelated to air blast or air blast pushing on the ground. Yet, the Justice Department and the government insist to this day that that truck bomb was the sole method of destruction.
And as the listeners can see, there's a mountain of evidence. This isn't just a couple people saying, well, maybe it was or wasn't. No, there's just a mountain of evidence supporting the fact that it was not an ANFO bomb. And there's multiple things it could have been. Are you familiar with Michael Riconosciuto, Holland, at all?
Yes, we've done. Yeah, I've read some of his work. He did work with Ted Gunderson, also, who recently passed. Yeah,
and they put together a movie back, I think it was in the 90s, called Murder in the Heartland. And they had interviewed J.D. Cash and a few other people, but Riconosciuto talked about the barometric bomb that he had worked on, and it was for the CIA, and then it was evidently stolen from him afterwards. And then he was set up with, I think they planted drugs in his the area, whatever his warehouse, wherever it was that he was working in, and then he got busted and sent to jail for like 25 years or whatever. But I know they interviewed him once, and he said that and this guy was, that's what he did. He built bombs, and he said there was no way that an ANFO bomb could have done that. It just did not have the brisance, the shattering force to, take those columns out like that.
Yeah, exterior truck bombs do not cut interior steel columns in two and cut the rebar. And the Murrah building had been built with bomb resistance in mind. It had been built in the 70s, right after the Sterling Hall for the first ANFO bombing in modern history. So it had been built with bomb resistance in mind. An exterior truck bomb parked up to 15 foot away, a low explosive ANFO bomb is totally incapable of doing that damage. Whatever was in the truck was powerful, and it did make a somewhat large crater, a middling-sized crater. And what it would have done to the Murrah building was blown in the glass, damaged the facade, certainly killed a number of people, but there would never have been a catastrophic structural collapse inside the building. That's simply impossible.
Yeah, another day when apparently physics just goes by the wayside.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, when he was talking about... Yeah, when he was talking about that, the bite is offset from the major crater. I mean, literally, the blast wave would have had to go forward and take a right-hand turn. It's like the magic bullet with JFK. Well, this is the magic blast wave that turns and cuts into the building. It's nonsense. And even Hoppy Heidelberg, he points that out in the one of the interviews. He's like, you have to be a moron to think that truck bomb would do that. Well, when we start looking at it, and then you start looking at what the experts have said. I mean, did you mention Cohen earlier?
Yeah, Samuel Cohen, inventor of the neutron bomb. He analyzed the evidence. He issued a statement saying it's simply impossible and against the laws of nature for a truck full of fertilizer and diesel fuel to do that damage to a steel reinforced concrete building. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's the guy that made the neutron bomb, ladies and gentlemen. Okay,
and he recently passed also just a couple months ago, which is one reason we wanted to include his statement.
And it's important because that carries weight with it right there. That's not just that's not like the newspaper boy making some random comment because he read something on the internet. Mm-hmm. That comes from somebody that holds clout. Try to debunk that.
The Air Force did a simulation of the Oklahoma City bombing. They actually had a test structure, and they made an ANFO truck bomb outside the building, and they discovered something very quickly, is that when you make an ANFO truck bomb the way that McVeigh and the FBI said he did, with a dozen barrels, that each barrel is a bomb, and they basically cancel each other out, and most of the remaining blasts go straight up in the air. It did almost nothing to their simple 3-story test structure, which had no support columns or a roof. So they had to actually construct a single, more powerful 4,000-pound bomb, blow it up, and what it did did was it kind of cracked the facade a little, and that's pretty much it. So they exploded bombs inside their test structure. And the Eglin Air Force case study, the Wright Armament Laboratory, using our tax dollars of work, Air Force engineers, they said that there were bombs inside the building. Yet to this day, the government says that truck bomb did all that damage.
Yeah, just like they say that jet fuel fires were responsible for the first time in history of pulverizing concrete. Because that happens.
Oh, yeah.
But again, another day where, apparently when it suits the government's needs and the military-industrial complex needs, physics goes by the wayside. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. During the break, Holland, James, and myself were having an intriguing conversation about like what drives you to do this, or what drives the three of us to do the stuff we do and push this stuff forward. And we all are of like the same opinion on the matter. Is you can't know about this stuff and not do something. Right, guys?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, once I woke up. Once I realized what was going on in the world and actually shifted out of the mainstream reality, I can't not be involved. I mean, I don't understand how people can know the truth and not do something about it. It's like, I can understand people not wanting to face the reality. You know what I mean? Because it's a horrific nightmare. I mean, we say that on our show all the time. Prove me wrong, please. It's a nightmare, But once you know it, how can you not get out and do something?
Exactly. I mean, the fact is, this for Oklahoma City, this happened in our backyard, and I was in the Marine Corps at the time. I was away, so I wasn't. Even then, I was able to pay attention to somewhat of the stuff that was going on. I started hearing about the seismograph pretty early on, and I remember I was at the armory one day cleaning my weapon, and some other Marines were there, and they're asking me about Oklahoma. They knew I was from Oklahoma, and I started talking about the seismograph and some of the other stuff, John Doe number 2, and a couple of officers heard it, and they came over and shut me down and said I couldn't be talking about that anymore, and I literally couldn't. I risked insubordination. So I learned a couple things. One, that I would not be re-enlisting in the Marine Corps, and two, that once I was a free man, I would never shut up about the bombing again.
Yeah, it's amazing how they try to clamp down on your speech. When I was golden boy until I got injured, and then once I got injured, you know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
And while I was recovering from my first surgery, I had started to read "Behold a Pale Horse" and "Rule by Secrecy" by Jim Marrs. Mm-hmm. And it was like my head, I started to get massive headaches. Not until years later did I realize why I had such headaches and like problems reading the book at certain times. It's because my programming in my head was going haywire. It was like, what the hell?
I mean, literally, that's what Gary Franchi was speaking at Freedom 21 conference here in Oklahoma, and it cracked me up because he goes, yeah, I remember I locked myself in my basement for 2 weeks and watched documentaries and to deprogram myself, and it was like, yeah, it's a common experience. It's like once you get a taste, man, you just got to keep going. And this is what we wanted to add to the group of movies that expose the truth about these events, because there was little pieces here and there, from the early 90s. You could watch some of the mainstream documentaries or whatever, but there was really nothing that really encapsulated the entire event and allowed the eyewitnesses to give their full information. And our director of photography actually worked with some of the mainstream outlets, was it National Geographic, et cetera, and said that the interviews went the exact same as they did with us. But anything that contradicted the official story got cut out of those mainstream interviews. They do not in this one. And this is where people are going to probably be the last chance they're going to hear some of these survivors on film, because they're telling us that they're not going to do another interview. This was the last shot to really encapsulate the story into one cohesive package.
So it's like a time capsule of truth. I guess you could call it. I mean, so a lot of these people are going to be dead, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but a lot of them are going to be dead within the next 10 years.
Some are already in ill health. We kind of caught some of these in their last moments of vitality.
Parton doesn't look too good. And I'm not saying he's one of the ones that's sick, but I know he's getting old. He was old back in the 90s.
Yeah. General Parton is...
he's got to be in his 90s or something, right?
Oh, he's got to be, but he still looks good, and he still looks dignified. He was able to do a good interview.
I mean, he looks dignified. Yeah. Like, he still holds himself up, but you could tell he's getting old, I should say. You're right. I'm sure within the next 10 or 15 years, most of these witnesses are going to be gone, and there goes the true history of what happened, and that's what the government wants, because then they could just run around and tell the next generation whatever they want.
Well, that's what gives me the greatest satisfaction of this whole project is knowing that we've done right by them. The people who were involved, the people who survived all this, they've seen the movie and they support us 100%. And that's what actually makes me happy is knowing that we have reclaimed the true story of Oklahoma City, that the government cannot take that lie, that noble lie, and rub it on our face every time we start to question what they're doing to us. And as long as the true history is reclaimed, I'm happy with that.
Well, you guys have done a service to not only the country, but to history itself and to future generations, because I believe that it's actions by people like you guys and other filmmakers, the radio show hosts out there that talk about this stuff. Anybody that Holland, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about like old school radio programs getting brought out of nowhere. I know that you have listened to a few of the Mae Brussel videos that I've thrown up on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And that stuff's incredible. She talked about this stuff in the 70s, and she's so dead on. She talked about Jonestown and stuff before it happened.
Yeah, Mae Brussel should be listed as one of the great historians of American history, yet she's almost unknown. The ground she broke was just amazing.
Yeah, and she, like, her and people like her paved the way for, people like us.
Before the internet,
exactly.
Which is amazing. It's almost hard to imagine this information revolution happening without the internet. But there were people before the internet out there pioneering, literally risking their lives and exposing deep state crimes.
And even within this case, that's what we try to do is take the Oklahoma Bombing Investigations Committee's information, the final report. Folks can find it on Amazon out there, and take that information that they put together, and that was really the first half of the movie. And then the second half, we try to focus on the new information that has been brought out by researchers, like I said, like Wendy Painting, and then Jesse Trinidad. The documents he's gotten through his FOIA requests and lawsuits against the Department of Justice and FBI and CIA. It's just phenomenal.
And isn't it phenomenal how much money they spend defending the lies, and it's amazing. My mom told me when I was a kid, it's easy to remember the truth because the truth is the truth. It's fresh in your memory. That's the way it happened. Mm-hmm. But a lie really didn't happen, so that memory isn't ingrained into your head. And you're going to forget what you said, but the people that you told it to aren't, because they themselves are having their own experience, and that memory is being ingrained into their head, so they're recording it. And that's how people get caught. And they start making stupid, oh, we didn't say that. Yes, you did. Here's the video. Oh, well, now we have to backtrack, and we didn't mean that, and this and that and the other thing. Or in like this or 9/11's case, a lot of the times they just say national security. Mm-hmm. Can't see the evidence, national security. How's that national security? How does that make us any safer not knowing what's going on? Am I correct?
Right. That's what's going on with the Oklahoma City bombing and the videos. There were so many cameras in the area that day, and they've changed their story back and forth. Oh, they can't find them. Then they said, well, here you can have some of the tapes, but then they all go black at 9:02. Well, what was going on? Well, all the security companies in different buildings were changing their tapes at the exact same time, the time that the bomb went off on the, at the Murrah building, or the multiple bombs. And, to this day, if it's been almost 17 years later, if everybody's been brought to justice, why can we not see the tapes? It's just like the Pentagon. Show us the tapes, and we'll believe it. See, that's what Hoppy Heidelberg was asking. As a federal grand jury member, he actually read the federal grand juror's handbook and realized that he can call witnesses and ask for evidence. So he's saying, show us the tapes. I don't care if McVeigh went to a gun show in the early '90s. What does that matter? Show me the tape of them getting out of the truck. And that's really, I think, what set Jesse Trinidad off on his search about the Oklahoma City bombing.
Jesse Trinidad, we have an interview with him. He's an attorney from Salt Lake City. A couple of weeks after the bombing, his brother Kenneth, who had a bank robbery conviction in his past, was picked up for a minor parole violation in California, flown by Con Air to the Federal Transfer Center in Oklahoma City. And they talked by phone. He's like, well, I'm not sure why they flew me out here. He didn't even expect to spend any time in jail for what he wasn't really an infraction. It was more of a misunderstanding with his parole officer. Certainly didn't warrant being flown out there. And they didn't expect him to serve any time. Then a couple of days later, they get a call that he's dead, that he committed suicide. It took him forever to get the body back, and when they get it back, it's covered in bruises. There are ligature marks around the neck. His throat has been sliced. His skull has been battered open. and they ruled it a suicide. Jesse Turntidu sued the government. He won his wrongful death lawsuit against the FBI and the Bureau of Prisons, but he still didn't know why his brother was killed. People were leaking him information within the government. It appears that they thought Kenny may have been a John Doe number 2, and he was killed in a case of totally mistaken identity. So to this day, the government denies that there was a John Doe number 2, but they believe it to the extent they were willing to kill a man because they thought he was John Doe number 2 just a couple weeks after the bombing. Well, Jesse has pursued the government ever since then with his Freedom of Information Act requests, and through them he has revealed, actually the government has revealed through their own documents, that there were at least 4 to 6 informants within and around McVeigh prior and up to the day of the bombing, that at the very least several federal agencies knew that Timothy McVeigh was going to try to bomb the Murrah building. For some reason, it's not stopped.
And what was the first document that he gets was actually leaked to him from somebody, I guess, within the FBI, and it said that the suspects were leaving the truck. The video actually showed suspects.
The official Secret Service timeline of viewing the videotape says 3 minutes, 6 seconds after the truck parked, the suspects, plural, exited the truck. Of course, there's no tape to back this up because they never released those tapes.
Yeah, they seem to have cameras that work every other time except when things go bad. Or, excuse me, when they do something bad.
If you run a red light, it'll work.
Well, and that's what...
Dude, they could read the tag on your underwear with a red light camera, but they can't tell you what hit the Pentagon on 9/11.
No.
Because the cameras were down on one of the most secure buildings on Earth.
Yeah, Princess Diana, same thing. Anytime that one of these events occur, all of a sudden all the cameras are
What horrible camera company do they buy? I don't want to buy my equipment from there at all.
Their record is horrible.
Well, Jesse, whenever he finally got it down to the point where, they said it would pose a grave risk to national security if they were to release the tape.
See, again, with this national security crap. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I played Colonel Prouty about a week and a half ago talking about the National Security Council and getting into detail about that. You see how it all dovetails together?
Yeah, Fletcher Prouty, he's great.
Oh, this police state is just unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Hour 2 coming up. We'll be right back. Top of the hour break. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. It is January 29th, 2012. Today I'm hanging out with the filmmakers from A Noble Lie, James Lane and Holland Vandennieuwenhof. And hour 1 just went by like that. It just zipped right by, as it always does. I mean, guys, I got to be honest. Whenever I have a guest on, and usually the people I have on are powerful guests such as yourselves, and it just time goes right by. I'm sure the second hour will probably run out of time and not even have a chance to get on top of everything that we want to. So let's get right back into it. How long did it take you to actually put this whole project together? I mean, from the time that you guys actually sat down and conceived it to the time that you printed the movies in the jewel cases?
Well, I would say that the concept of the movie was actually started by one of our producers, Chris Emery. He's the gentleman that actually did the narration on the documentary. He had been working with Film Project Idea for a while, and then when I came on board, I said, okay, let's go forward with this, and I started Free Mind Films and actually started pulling the people together that were going to be required to make this happen. But Holland, his research, Chris's Wendy paintings, that was really the core of it, and their writing was really how we were able to pull. Again, like I said, it could have been 12 hours worth of information. We just had to boil it down, and there were so many nights we sat there going through the outline over and again and over again. We're like, well, we got to cut this. Oh man, we want to leave this in, but like we had to have it just be the most provable aspects of the case. And so I would say total, after we started the Free Mind Films company, probably about 2 years from the time that we did that until it actually went to release. And it was a lot of hours, but a labor of love. And the coincidences, we kind of lost count on them. You know, I mentioned that a little bit at the first of the show, but I mean, it'd be weird little things like, you know, we blew some RAM on one of the computers, and man, what are we going to do? We got to keep going. We were tapped out, and like somebody won a scratch off that was just enough to buy the memory, and things like that happened so many times, man. It was, you know, it's why we feel that this was really kind of our destiny, and you know, it's just to get the truth out, you know.
I've had situations like that where I compare it to, I've said to my wife, I've never said this on air before, but I've said to my wife, it's like playing a video game. Where you ever play one of those like point and click games from back in like the 90s where you would find something random and you would be like, pick this up, and you're like, oh, why do I need to pick up like some eagle's foot, and you're like I know I'll need this later, but I don't know why. And it happens to me all the time. I'll be walking down the street and I've literally seen something that I'm like, oh, what is that? And it's like $100 bill sitting there, and I'm like, dude, I could use that to go buy blanks. You know,
exactly.
I've had that experience.
The video games, because I was like, I wasted a lot of my life just in apathy playing games, and I would run groups, put together groups of all the different skill sets that I needed to accomplish something, and it's funny enough that, I understand that now that is, a great distraction just to keep people from, being involved in their actual lives. But I used that skill set, when I first got awake, we created We Are Change Oklahoma. And, and then again, with the movie, I was able to find the people that I needed to put the crew together because of the skills that I developed during that. So it's kind of humorous.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's the name of that book? The Celestine Prophecy. Yeah. If you ever get a chance to read the book, I don't suggest that people have to actually believe everything the book says. It's kind of actually a story. But it's interesting because the guy, that finds out about the information, it's like a series of quote unquote coincidences, and it's the same thing that when you get that book, people that have that book end up having this kind of weird experience where they meet people through weird, quote unquote coincidences. So
right. Well, we needed we needed a witness. Now, this actually didn't make the cut, but at the time they had found a document. They had just uncovered the document. They're like, man, we really need to find a witness that could collaborate this document that says that they were actually bringing people that were involved in the white separatist, white supremacist movement in for questioning immediately, because the FBI wants to stay as far away as they can from Elohim City. We'll get more into that in a second, but we do radio shows, out of where we were working, and one of the hosts had somebody come in that night that was talking about, trying to get felonies expunged from the record, and he says he heard us talking about it. He's like, yeah, he goes, they pulled me in within minutes after the bombing. He pulled me in and for questioning because he was part of the Aryan Nation, and Elohim City. That is a white separatist compound in eastern Oklahoma. And this is really at the core of where a lot of the players show up. It's one of those threads that kind of ties the story together. And the FBI didn't seem to want to include it in their investigation whatsoever. And I believe it's, from the documents that Jesse Trinidad has uncovered, talking about the 6 Southern Poverty Law Center agents, being undercover there at that facility at the time, I think is a reason why. I mean, we see the Southern Poverty Law Center actually acts as an independent wing of the FBI, where they can do things that normally, the FBI wouldn't be able to do. And they just wanted to hide
like the Stasi.
Right. Mm-hmm. They wanted to hide the fact that these people were operating out of this white separatist compound. Now, Elohim City, like I said, it's interesting because of the way that it plays into the Oklahoma City case. We've got a actual resident of Elohim City that says that he sees Timothy McVeigh there at Elohim City, before the bombing. We see Andreas Strassmeyer. He's head of security there. Carol Howe, she was operating out of there, and she was an informant for the ATF that is telling them that there are people talking about attacking a federal building. They're actually scouting locations. And so, again, this is the hub of activity where all of these players are involved.
And just like 9/11, the Oklahoma City bombing is this, bigger web than what you think when you just look at it. You know what I mean? That's why it's much easier for the general public to pick up the basic, story that the government feeds, because it's simple. It wraps it up in a nice little dressing, and
it's a simple truth.
Yeah,
and it's funny you bring that up because there's a book called Simple Truths. It's written by John Hursley. I apologize, John. John Hursley is an FBI agent. He was also the managing agent for the prosecution in the trial of Tim McVeigh. He was also, as we have documented, we didn't have time to put this in the movie, but one of the FBI agents who threatened Grand Juror Hoppy Heidelberg was John Hursley back in the early days of the investigation. John Hursley is now the go-to guy for the mainstream media whenever they want to have a good apologist for the official story. They have John Hursley up there with the American flag in the background. He talks about how wonderful the FBI is and how an FBI agent would never lie, ever, or steal or cover up the truth. And we should take his word for it. And he actually wrote a book called, he actually didn't write it, he had it ghostwritten. And it's called Simple Truths. And it's an apology. It's trying to rectify the official story with the reality, which is in itself kind of funny because there is no real official story. There's not one go-to source because the FEMA report is different from what the prosecution presented at trial. It's different from what the FBI says. It's different from Janet Reno said. It's different from what Eric Holder said. It's different from what Bill Clinton said. There's like 9 different stories that they try to cobble together to try to fend off the truth. But the people who were involved with the investigation and the eyewitnesses, they have never changed their story to this day.
You know, and that book is actually available at the Memorial Museum here in Oklahoma, and I'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts that a noble lie will not be presented there.
That's what a noble lie is always covered up in. They use a simple truth to cover up the noble lie.
Right. And interestingly enough, I was actually at the 9/11 memorial for the 10-year anniversary, and I had my We Are Change Oklahoma shirt on. And we were going through there, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Oh, Oklahoma." He goes, "Yeah, I work for the museum there in Oklahoma." And, "Oh, really? What are you doing up here?" "Well, I'm helping them set up the 9/11 Memorial Museum." So the same people that were involved in institutionalizing this lie in Oklahoma are now up there to help them do the very same thing. And at the same time, we are trying to get, this information out. We say we want to teach the Constitution, in the public schools here in Oklahoma. They vote that down, but then they say we're going to teach the official story of the Oklahoma City bombing in the curriculum. The legislature passes that, and you see them doing the same thing in New York.
It's disgusting. Tyranny is taking over, ladies and gentlemen. Time to stand up and fight. We're going to break. We'll be right back. So why do I harp on things like Oklahoma City? It's been almost 20 years, Popeye. Get over it. Come on, James. Come on, Holland. Get over it. It's been almost 20 years. Let it go. You conspiracy theorists. I'll give you a perfect example as to why we have to keep bringing this up until these scumbags are brought to justice and swing from a yardarm, okay, as far as I'm concerned. Because you have people like Eric Holder who were involved with this cover-up that are in power today. And James Holland and myself were having a conversation off air, and he made, both of them brought up Eric Holder at 2 different points during the conversation. And that's why I decided to bring it up, because it's really important to harp on this, especially because of the election season. And that was another good point that was brought up. It was the fact that, with Obama running for re-election, what is he going to do with Holder? Because, Holder's got a past of doing things with false flags and covering things up. And look what happened with Fast and Furious. Right, James?
Actually, I'll field that question.
Go ahead, Holland.
Eric Holder, who's now Attorney General of the United States, he came to the Justice Department first in, I believe, 97 or 1998, and as an assistant attorney general. And one of his first jobs was to cover up the murder of Kenneth Trentadue, whom we discussed earlier. Obvious homicide. The court ruled in the Trentadue family's favor, and Eric Holder was in charge of that cover-up. In fact, he wrote emails detailing Trentadues and Trentadon'ts and comparing the trial that was going to come up to D-Day, the invasion of Normandy, as how he's trying to motivate his Justice Department attorneys in covering the truth of what happened to this innocent man. He is now Attorney General of the United States, responsible for executing the laws of this nation. We see Fast and Furious in the headlines now, the ATF gun running operation, where they're allowing thousands of guns to flow into the Mexican drug war that have killed at least 2,000 Mexican citizens, cops, and soldiers, and at least 3 U.S. law enforcement officers. So we see right now in the headlines, Fast and Furious. It's a false flag operation in the headlines that killed 2,000 people. What is so hard to believe that a similar operation 16 years ago killed less than 200? We have uncovered documents on PatCon, Patriot Conspiracy. It was an FBI operation called PatCon to infiltrate every dissident right-wing group in the country and implicate them in firearms and explosive violations to throw them in jail. We see the birth pangs of Oklahoma City in PatCon, some of the same people involved, Larry Potts and others. So it's very likely, as Roger Charles, one of the investigators in the bombing, has said, for every white op, there is a black op. All they had to do was take this existing sting operation under PatCon, this criminal faction within the government decide to make it go live. They manipulate a few key players, a few key parts, and the whole agency structure is now involved in the cover-up because it's their truck, it was their bomb, it was their informant. How are they to explain to the American people that, oops, they made a mistake, they killed 200 people? No, they're not going to do that. They're going to cover their asses, they're going to cover their career, and they're going to lie and cover up.
And Holland makes a point in the movie that these institutions' primary responsibility above truth and justice is self-preservation. Now, you know, there's a lot of people that are very upset now, and rightfully so, about the NDAA bill. You know, but we say, well, you know, they're like, well, they wouldn't round up American citizens. They wouldn't actually, you know, use that on Americans. Well, but it's in the legislation and it's there for a reason. Well, who are the types of people that they would round up? I think when you look at their own internal documents, you get a picture of the people that they're targeting. Catherine Bleich and John Bush from Operation Defuse actually gave us some documents that they garnered from, I believe it was one of the Florida fusion centers, that had a listing of, under the section domestic terrorism, subsection miscellaneous extremism, had okcbombing.net, which is the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee's website. Okay, these are the people that have the audacity to stand up to the expansion of police state powers and expose a false flag cover-up for what it is, right? Those are the people that have to be silenced, and that is what these institutions will bring their power to bear to silence.
That's exactly why people need to support, you know, again, this film and go out and buy the film so this information can get out. People, you know, again, if you go out and buy 10 copies, give out the 10 copies to 10 people you know, and then they hold screenings, and maybe somebody even copies it and gives 10 copies of that copy out to 10 more people, and then they say, hey, you should go watch this film or go here and pick it up and buy it, and then they go and they spread it like a virus, like anything else, like the truth naturally does. I mean, by now, I'm sure everybody out there, the listeners, have seen how fast truth spreads. It's amazing now, of course, with the internet. You know, 10 years ago, if you told me we'd be able to do this, guys, I'd be like, yeah, right. You know what I mean? Now you can get it on people's cell phones, iPads, computers, televisions, TiVos, whatever. And, you know, that actually brings a question up. Did you guys try to get this on Netflix? Because I think that would be really beneficial to you guys.
Well, that's one of the things that we're working on. You know, as the months unfold here, there will be more outlets that will become available. And like I said, we do have a final intention of making this, you know, available for people to see in a wider, you know, venues. And to that end, you know, if your listeners again want to go to enobleye.com, pick up a copy of the movie, all they have to do is email us contact@freemindfilms.com. And tell us that they want to do a screening. We will be able to send them movie posters and other promotional materials. We'll sign off on whatever we need to for, you know, public access screenings and the like. So we do support you know, the listeners out there to go out and spread the information to their friends and family.
And for those of you who say we should just give this free to the people, well, this is what we're doing. Buy a copy, show it to 100 of your friends. You have our permission, and we'll sign the piece of paper. So we're not trying to hold back information, hold anything back.
I agree. If you go out there and spend, this movie had to have had, I'm sure, you guys don't have to say a number, but I could tell from, you know, my knowledge of editing and stuff, I would say, and production and everything, I would say you guys probably spent close to like maybe between $30,000 and $40,000 with everything, cameras and, you know, travel, everything else, and food and everything, probably $30,000-$40,000 over the course of time, you know, into this film. And you're never going to make all that back, but in order for you guys to be able to do another film, you need to recuperate some sort of, you know, money. And you even said that you have a future project, that you guys have a goal, you know, before the end of 2012, I believe. You guys are putting out a second movie.
That That is the intention. One of the aspects we explore in the story is Tim McVeigh himself and why. And, he is the central character, if only for the fact that he's only the only convicted perpetrator. But when you look at Tim McVeigh, why did he implicate other people? I've interviewed people who knew McVeigh, who talked with him at the defense table, and he told them that he had promised them that he would keep his word. I've talked to people who are in McVeigh's platoon. They said McVeigh was incapable of independent action, that he would follow any order you gave him, but he was never capable of being a mastermind. So we look at why Tim McVeigh kept his mouth shut, why he didn't implicate other people. Then we see the intervention of Dr. Jolyon West. Dr. Jolyon West was retained by the defense counsel immediately after the bombing. Dr. Jolyon West is kind of a two-pronged influence on American society. One, he's like the go-to guy for every weird murder or cult sacrifice. He worked with Sirhan Sirhan, Jack Ruby, in many of those cases. He actually consulted with the FBI on Waco and later wrote about it. Also, the other prong of Jolly West's influence on American society is that he was one of the top CIA MK Ultra mind control operators in this country. This is verified through the release of the records. He was one of the top recipients of CIA money to investigate methods of brainwashing. In fact, Jolly West literally was retained and wrote the manual on brainwashing. He consulted with McVeigh and his defense and then later recommended his own protege, Dr. John Smith, to take over direct care of McVeigh. Dr. John Smith later shows up as chief of psychiatry at Guantanamo Bay, a known mind control laboratory. So you see this influence, and that's something we'll be exploring in our next film.
Yeah, and then down in Guantanamo Bay, they don't want the older so-called terrorists. They want the young guys. It looks like they might be making the next wave of perpetrators of false flags.
It kind of makes you wonder why they made guys grab Average Ahmed. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get back into it when we come back. We're going to break. We'll break back. Like I said, massive spider web. Massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe in leading by example. And by that, I mean, maybe people get inspired by me doing things. So in that tone, I'm going to offer James and Holland free advertising space on Federal Jack for their website and for the movie for, at least 6 months or a year. That way, you guys give me a banner. I'll say it right here on air. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't say this off air. This is a surprise to them. But I believe in leading by example. And I think others should do it as well and, help each other in the alternative media out. Sometimes there's infighting, and I think that's a lot of that is promoted by these intelligence agencies or, people like the SPLC. And that is to, create infighting and divide us. So I think we all need to stand together so we can defeat this. So that
shows you're the real deal, man, and thank you for that. That's absolutely
well, you guys
awesome.
are awesome, man. I think you guys rock for what you did. So yeah.
See, and that's the other thing is other people have tried to get me to turn on this person, that person. I don't believe in infighting. I focus my energy on the enemy. The infighting only serves to help the enemy.
Yeah, there's no use wasting energy on that, even if someone, really makes you mad. And you say, a lot of it is sponsored by the government or the SPLC. Well, half of it. Half is just pure idiocy. People grow up,
People's egos, and if you don't like what somebody's doing, then go do something better. You wake up more people than they did, and I'll support you 100%.
Exactly.
I agree. And, a lot of it is it's disinfo put out to cause infighting. And you guys said that through your activism you were even approached by, I guess you could call it agents or whatever, to try to probably create chaos and disorder amongst your ranks, correct?
Yeah, there were a couple verified incidences where federal law enforcement tried to get close to some of our activism issues, yes.
Yeah, see, so they are actively out there trying to break things up. So whether it's
that's out on CBS. I think they talked about the anti-war movement. They had agents within there. It's just that's out in the open. That's not classified.
Yeah, good point. Actually, a really good point. The anti-war movement. I mean, talk about. I know they've been silent. Since their
peace candidate.
God, since their God got in office, which I think is kind of hypocritical. If you're going to be anti-war, then you got to be anti-war. You can't be, you can't pick a side. But that's a whole nother show in itself. But you're right. The anti-war party, they do get. It's amazing how they get targeted like hardcore. Like just because they don't want to, they bomb innocent little kids and stuff and blow kids up and waste billions of dollars. It's amazing how much the government spends on getting you to believe the BS. You know what I mean? Like, how much of our tax dollars do you think they spend on trying to back up their lies?
Exactly. I mean, I have contacts here in Oklahoma City who basically talked to federal agents who are monitoring the Occupy Oklahoma City movement here in town. It's like, really? Because those guys are just basically public camping. Related to our own efforts, We Are Change, I guess I can relate this story that one of our members was approached by the FBI, and I verified this story through the man's attorney. And he wanted him to be an informant for the FBI against We Are Change Oklahoma, and in fact, somewhat offered to help him with any future drug problems the man might have. So there are verified instances where they've tried to do this. And the fact is, though, with We Are Change Oklahoma, it's like there's nothing to infiltrate. It's like they're going to hand out flyers. It's on the website.
Yeah, go to meetup.com. You get in on all the secrets. They're going to hand out DVDs and flyers at the memorial. Yeah, I mean, really? I mean, it's all out in the open.
There's no real secrets. And that's the thing about this. We have no secrets to keep, and that's what gets you in trouble. That's what killed Terrence Yakey. He did not tell his family what he knew because he was trying to protect them. He's trying to keep things secret.
That Regine Palfrey, too. She should have opened her mouth when she had the chance. She wouldn't have been found hanging in the backyard.
Exactly. Yep. Do not keep secrets. That's something we learned from Jesse Trent to do. As soon as he gets something, he puts it out there. He will not hold on to it.
And he's alive to this day because of it. That's why you were able to interview him. And by the way,
he does say that when he starts he either has his wife start his car, or he has the door open with one leg outside just in case.
That's smart. I would keep a broom by the door and just shut it really quick. And if you see gunfire hit it, you just step back. No, got to take a knee. Apparently, my offer has already inspired other people. Anti-Tyranny News, the guy that runs it, the webmaster, his name's Josh. He's a good friend of the show. He comes on often, and he offered. He said, "Just send me the info or whatever, and I can email him, or I'll get his email and I'll give it to you. If you email him, he'll give you a banner space on his site for free."
This is awesome,
too, so.
And this is great. You know why? The one thing about doing these interviews, which I really want to impart to the audience, is that you don't quite realize how many of us are out there and supporting each other. I mean, I see all these different networks, all these millions of people talking across the globe to each other about issues that really matter, not about Tim Tebow or American Idol, but about the New World Order and globalism and false flag terrorism. There are so many of us out there that we're helping each other, and I thank you for this. But there is no way they can stop us. There's so many of us that are out there awake and doing things.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in that, just you can send an email to contact@freemindfilms. We'll be sure and send links and banners. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Give that email out one more time.
contact@freemindfilms.com.
And tell them they could buy your movie one more time.
anobelie.com.
And if we consider this investigation still open, so if you have any tips or investigative leads on the bombing, go to contact@freemindfilms.com. I answer all the emails, and we still conduct interviews. We still interview people, and at some point there will be a follow-up. We'll see.
You see, that's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. We all work together. That way we can get the truth out and, fix this, bring the people responsible to justice, and snapping your fingers isn't going to get it done overnight. I try to tell people, we have to be realist about this as well. It's not like if Ron Paul, let's say a miracle occurred and Ron Paul gets in office, right? He was the president. He wouldn't take the oath and on January 21st land with a cape and, poof,
exactly.
Everything would just be fixed. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It would be the start. He would be getting the door open for us to get in and fix, we're the repairmen, the people of this country, the citizens. Ron Paul getting in the office would just be like him having the keys to say, yeah, go in and, fix what's broken. That's the power of it. It's not like it's not so much him, it's the ideas that he talks about and, and he pushes forward with. So
they couldn't shut it down overnight. I mean, there's all these people that become dependent on the system, that would be up in arms if it was just to go in and just shut everything down. But I mean, I think he wants to initiate the process to start to minimize, to start to deconstruct the beast from the inside, and I wholeheartely support that.
It's the way we're going to do it, man. The way we're going to win it is together. We are going to beat them. I try to tell my listeners all the time, not to give into that fear vibe that they put out, because they use events like this to, get people to be not paying attention. They get once they're in that fear mode, it's flight or fight, and they're, oh my God, protect me, and I'll do whatever you say. Just keep me safe from the bad guy or the weather or the bad thing or global warming or, getting a rash on my ass or, stubbing my toe, whatever the case may be. That goes to the whole mind control stuff, because through media and everything else, people have been manipulated to be so, I don't want to say needy, but you know what I mean? Like dependent and not.
Well, what happens when you're attacked? What happens when you're attacked by an outsider? You cling to your leaders and you lash out at any foreign-looking people who have the label attached to their chest. I mean, that's psychologically what you do. And that's one reason people are able to look at Oklahoma City right now with somewhat objective eyes, because they're no longer afraid about Oklahoma City. They're afraid about, whatever, but they're not afraid about Oklahoma City. It was 15 years ago, and it's once removed from the terror theater because 9/11 intervened in a big way. But and that's something that people need to get over is fear. There's no reason to be afraid, and that is how you are controlled. More than anything, it's fear. You're afraid of looking bad or being killed or being discredited or of working hard, whatever. It's fear is how they control you. And if you confront your fear, you find that fear serves a purpose. Yes, it does. It's a tool to keep you on alert and keep you on your toes. And you should appreciate it, not ignore it. But it was never meant to control you.
Exactly. Fear is an emotion. And if we give into it, we're controllable, and...
Well, and people say, well, this person's a fearmonger, that person's a fearmonger. They even say that within the movement, it's like, well, just because someone is telling about the event, that it's like saying, the people that were being bombed in London, oh, why so gloom and doom? Turn that frown upside down. No, you're being attacked. We're under attack, Well, so sometimes you got to get the information out there, and it's not about fearing it. It's about facing it and dealing with it.
Exactly. Well, Holland will tell you, man, fear is an emotional response. It's what like from being in the service, you're trained to, master your fear basically and work through it. You're going to have that chemical response in your body. You have to figure out how to get through it in your mind and get beyond it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Stay tuned. Final segment coming up.
Kill your own citizens to advance your ways. All my real patriots stand up and say
9/11 and Oklahoma City were both inside jobs. See, I added OKC there, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're back. Final segment of the show. I want to thank James and Holland for taking 2 hours out of their Sunday to sit with us and talk. It's been an epic interview, guys. Just, incredible.
Thank you.
Give out the website one more time. I know I've made you reiterate it multiple times, but again, I think it's really important for people to get the film and spread it far and wide, have screenings and stuff. So give out the website, and then let's get into the 17th anniversary.
Okay. Yeah, folks can go to Expose the Cover Up now at ennoblelie.com. Pick up the movie there. We are also going to be coordinating with We Are Change Oklahoma for the 17th anniversary. So you can get on there and join the meetup and check out that site. As we get closer to the anniversary, we are going to be having a major street action at the Oklahoma City Memorial Museum outside. We can't actually be on the property because even though it was started with public funds, it's actually a private trust that owns it. And so we're not actually allowed to step foot on the property.
Other media is allowed on there, just not Freeman Films.
Right. So we will be standing across the street and getting folks as they go to and from the parking spots.
Oh, you mean the lamestream media is allowed out there?
Exactly.
And the people that tell the truth are made to go across the street.
Yeah, I set my camera up next to one of the news stations, and I was told that I wasn't allowed to be there.
Even though we had a press pass.
Yeah.
The memorial in Oklahoma City is run by the political establishment in Oklahoma. Some of the people who are involved in the cover-up are also involved in the memorial. And anyways, they're invested in the lie. And some of them know it's a lie, and they do their best to cover that up.
So yeah, if you guys want to get involved, check it out. Email us, contact at Fremont Films. Again, go to wearechangeoklahoma.org. There'll be more information about the event.
We're going to pass out a free copy of the movie to every person who attends the anniversary ceremony. This is the once in a year when they get everyone together, a lot of the survivors, a lot of politicians, they get together and they celebrate the lie. But we're going to let everyone in there know that we know the truth, and here it is. We're going to give them a copy of the movie. Therefore, they have no more excuse to be ignorant, and if they're not ignorant, they're complicit.
And just like bombing survivor V.Z. Lawton said, without truth, there is no justice.
I agree. We have to stand up before it's too late. I mean, it's already getting, close to midnight, and we should have reversed this. The baby boomer generation kind of dropped the ball, so it's left up to our generation to stop this thing and bury it dead in its, bury it 6 feet under, stop it dead in its tracks, and just get rid of it, kill it. Do what you do with a vampire. Cut its head off, put a stake through its heart, bury it in 2 different spots, show it the sunlight. Overkill, you know what I'm saying?
Have 5 good men guard the grave.
Exactly. Have 5 pissed off Marines guard it. They'll never get past it. I promise you.
Will not.
Nothing will get through that.
Well, and like I said,
can you guys give out that email one more time before I forget of how anybody can get in touch with you to put a banner with a link, so that you can send them the banners and the links and everything?
Sure. I mean, anything you guys want to get in contact with us for, you can contact@freemindfilms.com. We'll supply you banners. Again, if you want to do a screening, we'll provide you promotional materials for your screening. You can actually coordinate to have one of the researchers or filmmakers come out to be present during the screening for Q&A. We've already got some folks that are setting up a small Midwest tour for that very thing. And whatever aspect of it is, if you have information about the Oklahoma City bombing that you want to provide to the investigators, contact at Fremont Films. That's the one-stop shop for everything has to do with the Oklahoma City bombing and our efforts.
And I urged the listeners to please support their efforts. I don't go on air and I don't ask for donations to my site. I don't beg for money, but what I will do is go on air and ask you to support other people in the alternative media. And I think at this point, if you're going to give somebody a movie about something, give them this movie, because it's poignant not only about OKC, but to the point where you're going to wake somebody up to see that if they realize that OKC, which happened before 9/11, if they realize that that was done to elicit a certain response and legislation and, so on and so on, then,
What are the implications of your government being complicit in mass murder? And if they're not held accountable, what is there to stop them from doing it again? In fact, there is no incentive for them not to. They're incentivized to keep on doing it because they got their rewards. When you look at the cause of an event, and when you can determine, like we do with this, that the cause is contrived, the effect is the reason it was contrived. And we saw that they benefited from the bombing. So because they weren't held accountable with Oklahoma City and various other things, I mean, the covert arm of this government was doing this Oklahoma City's overseas a million times over for 50 years before 1995. This is something, this methodology, this formula, they had perfected in foreign countries with no punishment. So when it's time to make things move in a certain direction here, what is to stop them from bringing that terrorist methodology here at work in the homeland? Of course they did, and we saw it grow into 9/11. And unless we wake the people up when it happens again, we need to recognize it for what it is, because it's going to happen again, and refuse to cooperate with whatever horrific agenda they have for us afterwards.
Yeah, we have to stand up and get the information out. And again, this is like Hillary Clinton said, they're in an info war with us, and they're losing. And it's things like this. This movie will literally blow people away. If you don't know about that Oklahoma City bombing, ladies and gentlemen, I suggest you go research it, because, again, 2 hours, definitely not enough time of me sitting here, talking with them about it, going over. We could talk about a few things, but just you have to see the movie to be able to. They were able to put. What was it, like 10? If you didn't cut it down, it would have been 10 hours, I think you said, guys?
At least 10 hours, yeah. And another excellent source that your listeners can go to is the final report. That was the culmination of all the investigation from the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee, and that's available on Amazon.com. So these are the different aspects. You've got a noble lie. That'll give you the overview of it, give you good solid information. But if you really want the in-depth aspects of it, you can go to the final report itself. That was a lot of the source material that we used. Now we've had some detractions some detractors that say well, what about the Arab element? And I believe that the material you cover on the show, your audience is sophisticated enough to understand where we were coming from on this. We chose not to include the Arab element. It does exist. To say it doesn't exist only serves the cover-up itself. But I think whenever we say Al-Qaeda, we understand it's a CIA creation. It's a CIA operation. And it does look like there were elements of that involved. But the purpose of this film was to wake people up, to be a tool that you can show to friends and family and be confident, because we've shown it to skeptics and they say, wow, you make a powerful point, because we don't lead them to a conclusion. We only present evidence and eyewitness testimony. And so if this is a tool to wake people up that we've honed over years now with the 9/11 Truth Movement, we wanted to put that methodology to work in this film. And so I didn't want to show the uninitiated something about Al-Qaeda,
And the thing is, people get mad because we're not screaming Oklahoma City was not inside job. But you know what? We don't have to. We just show the evidence. Just because we're not screaming from the rooftops that the Oklahoma City was an inside job. And the thing is, we do say that, basically, but we just don't scream it from the rooftops.
Well, that's already, but that phrase is kind of already... 9/11, with 9/11 was an inside job. Why would you guys want to just look like you're jumping on the bandwagon?
We don't have to say that when we just show the evidence that the government knew was going to happen.
The evidence stands for itself. I mean, the work you guys have done is incredible. Again, ladies and gentlemen, when you get the movie, okay, because I know you're going to go out and buy it. And by the way, guys, a couple people in the chat room ordered a few copies already.
Oh, wow.
So when you guys get your copies of the movie, I promise you, I've watched it twice already. And the second time I was just like, how did I miss this the first time? Because I was going over with things I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I was just I like. There's so much you have to watch it a couple times because you guys were able to put that much information into like a 2-hour movie. So
right, this is supposed to spur research, and once you watch the movie, now go out and start to research it.
Yeah, people are saying, "Oh, why didn't you include this? Why didn't you include?" I mean, we have 2 hours.
Right.
And if you want to do your homework, do your homework
because there's an enormous amount of information that we weren't able to cover.
That's the thing that pisses me off. People are like, "Well, I want it presented to me on a silver platter." No, look, ladies and gentlemen, these guys did an excellent job. Take what they did and run with it. Don't ever believe something just because James says it or Holland says it or I say it or anybody. Take notes. You can trust us, but don't just believe us 100%. We urge you to do your research. You'll see the same things. That's
one of the purposes of this movie is to spur the independent investigation that 9/11 has. With 9/11, there's all these different threads of investigation being carried out. Very little of that is being done these days. There is some noble characters out there carrying on the investigation, but we want an academic pursuit, independent inquiry into the bombing that attracts the same level of attention that 9/11 has to bring out more evidence, to analyze all this much more. We have mountains of evidence sitting in boxes in secure, undisclosed, separate locations all over the state, mind you, but that we want people to go over. We have videotapes that we can't even go over yet.
Well, you see, that's why you guys are going to have to make a second movie. And ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to buy the first movie so you can help fund the second movie. That's just the way it goes. If we're going to win this, we all need to stand together or we're all going to hang separately. Okay? Everybody needs to get up and do their part. Let's go. Get up, get inspired by what you hear. Guys, we're out of time for today. Thank you so much for coming on. One more time, James, give out your email again.
Contact at Fremont Films. The website's at noblelie.com. Thanks for having us on, Popeye.
Yes, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, guys, great interview. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I love you all. Do your research. Enlighten yourself. Semper Fi. I'm out.